The atmosphere altered the moment Yandi stepped onto the platform, her face inscrutable. Her eyes, breathing, and tight smile all showed signs of sleep deprivation. Nobody expected her to validate the gossip that had been going around backstage for weeks. That is, until she allegedly sat down during a break and began filming while whispering, "I could be pregnant," just loud enough for 2 cast members to hear. Those 4 statements shocked the whole season 13 production of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. The silence that followed the fallout was deafening. Instant sources claimed that phones were immediately seized. As the texts started coming in, a producer nearly dropped their headset. Some thought it was a joke or a distraction. Others said her expression said it wasn't done for attention. At least it appeared genuine, and the timing is insane. The spying. Tale of Tasha K was just brought to light by Mendeecees. Yandi might be adding a child to the mix on top of Erica Mena's emotional struggles. Fans can't believe it. Confused and in need of explanation. Is everything that Yandi thought was stable crumbling? Or is this the beginning of a new chapter in her life? Because if it's true, there will be dire consequences. They'll be seismic. The place was buzzing after the last scene they shot. Erica paces the hallway. Production is whispering in the corners. However, Yandi threw away the moment that made everyone freeze. She had no intention of saying it. It just went over her lips and out when the cameras weren't even rolling. To the performers, a hairstylist and an assistant producer were the first to hear it. They thought she was kidding until they saw her eyes. She didn't recoil, she didn't smile. She looked down at her hands, she whispered, a little softer this time, "I could be pregnant." Then there was a disturbance. Something was mailed too. A makeup artist nearby who immediately whispered it to another crew member. Everyone on the set knew within 5 minutes, and before 10, people were taking sides. While Mendeecees drowned in scandal, some felt pity for him for keeping things together. Others were dubious, even as the producers persisted in promoting messier. Meaner content and Erica's breakdowns became the daily headlines. The issue was that Gandhi had not yet informed Mendeecees, and a close insider on the set claimed that she had not even verified it herself. There were only late periods, intense exhaustion, and an increasing feeling that her body was changing in a way she couldn't ignore no formal tests or doctor's appointments. But saying it out loud made it real, and there was no turning back now. Behind her back, they silently pondered whether there would be another well-timed plot twist. The show had to go on, and when Mendeecees showed up for filming the next day, nobody told him what was going on. Candy wasn't sure, and she wasn't even sure whether she believed it herself yet. In order to capture Mendeecees' unfiltered response, they gathered with the director and started discussing plans in whispers. They wanted her to say it on camera so that it could be included in the season arc. It was immediately apparent to him that something was amiss. The atmosphere was tense. When he inquired about Yandi's whereabouts, he received only vague answers such as, "She's getting ready," or "She's in Glom." Heads up, the same brightly lit interview chair, the same fake plant in the corner, and the same line of questioning that always began innocently and ended in a frenzy. But this time, they weren't searching for romance when they questioned him about his relationship with Yandi. Instead, they were waiting for the bomb to explode. But Glam was over an hour ago, and when she did appear, she didn't go up to him. She sat on the opposite side of the couch, so she was out of sight of him. That's when he knew something had changed. They started rolling. The conversation began with harmless questions about how they were managing the stress on stage. The same superficial bullshit regarding whether or not they were communicating more effectively this season. Then, surprisingly, the producer leaned over and said, "Is there anything you want to tell him? Something personal? Yandi?" Mendeecees looked at her puzzledly. Her face went white. As she paused, took a big breath, and repeated the lines. The cameras captured every tremble in her voice. "I may have a baby on the way." There was a painful silence. Mendeecees blinked twice. then let out a surprised little laugh, the kind that wasn't not amusing at all. "Are you serious?" he asked, and Yandi nodded hesitantly, barely able to meet his gaze. "I haven't confirmed it yet," she said. There was no cutting of the cameras. None of the team took a breath. "But something feels different." Leaning back on the couch, Mendeecees exhaled as though the wind had been rendered him unconscious. Not pleased or angry, but astonished and ... His whisper, which was nearly too low to hear, was more forceful than anything he could have said. "This isn't the time for something like this." Yandi flinched. When the producer tried to interrupt with a follow-up, the room was already in ruins. Yandi stood up and left without further word, sliding her hands down her pants. Her microphone picked up the sound of her breath, catching just as the door closed behind her and the sound kept rolling. Disaster struck backstage. Crew members whispered that something had gone awry with the scene. Yandi wasn't thinking about the show, but she heard the showrunner say, "We have to be careful with this." Another producer whispered, "If it is real, it changes everything." Yandi sat alone in the hallway, trying to control her heartbeat with her hand pressed to her chest. Even though she knew it was coming, she wasn't sure which hurt more, his answer or the fact that she said it. Mendeecees, on the other hand, sat in the interview chair for several minutes. Someone handed him some water. He did not touch it. He kept staring straight ahead as though he were watching his life play out in front of him. "We just got through the last mess. And now this," he said to no one in particular. Later that night, fans started speculating after a staff member accidentally uploaded a grainy photo of Yandi exiting the stage with her hand on her stomach. Before being quickly taken down, the caption was reposted on a number of fan pages. Comments were furious. Some accused her of using her pregnancy to attract attention. Those who supported her said she had every right to be overwhelmed. Seems that Mendeecees spent hours away from Yandi at home. One admirer remarked, "If it is real, then she's the only one trying to bring life into all this darkness." They sat softly, barely touching, and gazed at various parts of the living room. Lastly, she calmed everything down. "I didn't say it to trap you," she told him quietly. Mendeecees scratched the back of his neck and nodded without looking at her. When he replied, "I said it because I'm scared. Should have told me first, not everyone else." That line hurt more than she had expected, both because it was true and because she hadn't meant for it to spread this way. Since nothing in this culture was private, she had confided in someone other than Kimura, in the hopes that, for once, it wouldn't be used against her. Nor feelings, nor fears. Nothing with a maybe, not even a baby. The next morning, headlines dominated the blogosphere. Yandi gives a hint about her pregnancy during the production of Lotto. There will soon be a third baby. Mendeecees was caught off guard on set. No one waited for confirmation. The internet had already made up its mind. Additionally, they weren't. Typical. Every thread and comment area was filled with savage speculation. She is trying to keep a failing marriage intact. She is lying. This has to do with the story. Another season, another baby arc, darling. On the other hand, Yandi had no interest in publicity for mocking ladies who might be going through a legitimate pregnancy crisis. She was dragged by others. Erica didn't elaborate. She recently shared a meme that showed someone drinking tea. That afternoon, Mendeecees made a comeback. When he arrived, at a private scene taping Kirk and Scrappy, he was visibly nervous and barely talked. Kirk asked him bluntly, "Are you good?" And Mendeecees paused for a long moment before responding. "Good is what Scrappy defines." Mendeecees did not laugh when he made a joke to lighten the mood. "Man, you might be a daddy again, at that a blessing." He just looked down at his hands. Man, he looked like he was drowning. That look is not new to me. That man isn't sure if he should run or stay. Kirk later admitted his worry during the confessional, saying, "I just wanted a minute to breathe. Now I have to figure out how to be." Supporters praised Kirk for showing maturity, but the real conversation happened online. Bloggers were already debating timelines, trying to track Yandi's posts, movements, and attire over the past month to see if she had been hiding a bump. Some said it was a stretch, while others agreed, but the important thing was that they were talking. Do it all the time at home. Finally, Yandi called her doctor, feeling much more anxious because she had to wait for days for the appointment. She spent most of the day curled up on the couch, watching parts of the show while her mind wandered. When her daughter came in, climbed up behind her, and questioned, "Mommy, why do people keep saying baby on the phone?" Yandi was at a loss for words. Before the surprise blow came, she just kissed her forehead and muttered, "Some people don't know when to mind their business." A production worker released a raw video of Yandi telling Mendeecees, and a short clip ended up on a gossip page even though it wasn't scheduled for release yet. Despite the unpolished audio and poor lighting, the emotion was clear, and fans were able to view the exact he seemed to have seen a ghost. And she seemed to already know that he wouldn't be pleased. This is sad, not funny. Some cast members even replied in private, posting the video along with comments like this, "Ain't right," and "Pray for her." They noticed Yandi's lip quivering. They are like knives. The video went viral immediately, and people had a lot to say. Mendy finally came home that evening, and he went into the kitchen, left his keys on the counter, and stood there for a while without saying anything. Yandi read the message 3 times and said, "Own it before they spin it." The message was a warning and an encouragement to Yandi. Do not let them use your trauma as a plot point. Yandi stood in the hallway and watched him. "Are you upset with me?" "I'm not angry." "Mobile." She nodded, and he shook his head. "I do too." He looked to her at that point. The tension in his face a little lessened, and she said, "I didn't plan it this way." She didn't even intend to say it. When he replied, "I just don't want us to go through this in public again. Not like last time," they both realized what he meant. They had already been through a lot. Rumors, public splits, custody battles, infidelity, and now the possibility of another child in the middle of a storm. Neither had been prepared for Dot. Yandi refused to film that weekend, but she refused to back down in the face of intense pressure from producers, recording a voice message and sending it directly to the executive producer. "I'm not doing this like it's a plot twist," she said in it. Fans stayed glued to their screens, and a popular blogger hosted a live reaction stream in which she played back the leaked footage and asked viewers to comment on whether Yandi was being sincere, whether Mendeecees was wrong to react that way, or whether they were both just tired. "This is my life, and until I know what's happening with my body, I'm not answering any more questions." She deserves better. He's emotionally unavailable, and they should leave the show were among the many comments that flooded chat. But Yandi had one last thing to do before departing, so she booked a private hotel suite and invited her closest friends, Rashida, Mimi, and Carly, over. No cameras, no crew, just a couple of wine glasses, takeout containers, and plain old honesty. Once they were all seated, Yandi stopped and said, "I haven't taken the test yet. I've become too terrified. I have to know." "Whatever happens," Mimi said with a soft smile as Carly grasped her hand and the room went quiet. Rashidita gave a nod. Rashidita waited just outside the door of the hotel suite, pacing, looking at her watch and then turning back to the bathroom as if she could make time to move more quickly. "You have us." Yandi had never felt more vulnerable as they sat together, held space, and waited for the moment of truth to arrive. The only sounds in the hallway outside the hotel suite were the faint hum of the vending machine and the occasional footfall of staff members. When the bathroom door creaked open a few minutes later, Yandi didn't say anything at first, just held up the test, her face unreadable, and for a moment, no one breathed. Mimi sipped wine slowly, trying to keep her energy grounded while Carly sat on the edge of the bed, nervously picking at the hem of her dress. The weight of the moment spoke for itself. Mimi slowly stood up. The room was quiet, but it felt different. Now heavy, not tense. Yandi sat down on the bed, placed the test on the nightstand, and buried her face in her hands before whispering, In a trembling, soft voice, "It's negative." Rashida took a sharp breath and Carly blinked. "I don't know. What I'm feeling," she muttered. "Is it disappointing?" "Really? I have no idea." Mimi sat next to her and gave her a light back rub. "It's okay not to know," she replied. "What matters is that you listen to your body. You listened. You can breathe now." Carly went on, "And when you're ready to talk about it on camera, do it your way, not theirs." Rashida sat down across from Yandi, who nodded and wiped at her eyes, saying, "I guess I just needed something to make sense. Girl, nothing about this show or this world ever makes sense. But you're here. Well, you're strong. You're not alone either." She didn't like the false alarm, the spiral it caused, or the way Mendeecees looked at her like she'd thrown a grenade into their already fragile peace. But the machine didn't wait, and by morning, word had already spread that Yandi wasn't pregnant. With fans flooding the comment sections of every blog that had speculated otherwise, some offering solutions. While others made fun of her, one popular comment read, "See, told y'all it was just for ratings." While others said, "It's just 2 letters. All right, no, how are you feeling?" The same Yan Dandi. She waited while staring at the screen, but that was all she detested about the empathy. It was loud. "Hey. Well, we'll get through this." The producers, who were already reworking the plot, wanted Yandi to do a solo confessional, something emotional, something raw. But she refused, saying, "I already gave you my raw." It felt like someone had taken a pin to a balloon she was carrying around, and all that tension and air just leaked out, leaving her hollow dot on set. The producer tried again, but it evoked a lot of emotion, so he said, "I'm not performing it again for a close-up." They weren't happy about it, but they knew better than to push her in that moment. They tried to get Mendeecees to open up and reflect on the experience, but he shut them down too. It's nothing to think about. He claimed it was a false alarm. Took a few days before they spoke to each other again. "Fans aren't the ones raising my kids," Mendeecees said, looking directly at him. "At the moment, I owe them nothing." The wall appeared between them and the plot that they thought would win the season. But Yandi and Mendeecees were no longer cooperating because they were tired of being used as pawns, being analyzed and being labeled dramatic when they were just trying to breathe. The scene was intense, and when Yandi walked in, Mendeecees was already browsing through his phone. They sat down a few feet away, and neither of them spoke until she said, "So, this is where we are." He looked up. Wasn't planned, but they happened to be in the same studio for a wardrobe fitting. "Where do you think we are located?" She shrugged and said, "Strangers with a common past." "You dropped something big in front of the entire world," he murmured. "I just fell into a panic." "I know, and I didn't mean for it to go that way," she added, nodding. "I wasn't prepared either." There was a little pause before he went on. "I wasn't scared of the baby. Maybe that was what we needed to wake up to." He gave a nod. Maybe they sat there next to folks who had too much history and not enough clarity, instead of crying or hugging. Because of all we haven't addressed, Awaz was worried about what it would entail for us. Her eyes were soft as she looked at him. On her own conditions, Yandi consented to film a contemplative moment. She sat in a darkened room with the camera and no cutaways or producers asking questions. Her words, "I thought I might be pregnant," but it was something left to unravel. In a way, Dot Production ultimately achieved their goal. The video was unexpected on the internet when it was released weeks later. That peaceful moment stood out in a season full of conflict and mayhem because it was genuine rather than spectacular or ostentatious. It helped me understand how much I still fear life being noticed and losing myself not parenting. People believe they know this story. "Congratulations to Yandi for being honest," Erica wrote in a story that she posted. "Healing is messy but necessary," Rashida wrote in her repost. The world went on, but Yandi recalled the sensations of those times, the burden, the anxiety, the wave of condemnation, and, above all, the odd solace in knowing that Mindy watched it several times, according to sources, but kept mute in public. Another scandal surfaced at the end of the week. The emotional fallout from Yandi's pregnancy fear was still reverberating beneath everything. Even if the storm had passed on the surface, the cast kept performing, the cameras kept rolling, and the producers turned their focus back to fresh drama. But Yandi now moved in a different way. A dot. She was confident as she made her way through the next filming block. Not because everything was well, but because she had made it through. And in this world, that was enough. People saw, but they didn't know what to think of it. Mendeecees was likewise, maintaining a low profile behind the scenes, turning down 3 requests for interviews and stopping to respond to texts from the post-production crew. She wasn't trying to make headlines, she wasn't running to every scene, she wasn't getting caught up in small-time conflicts. Rather, she becomes more subdued and thoughtful. The couple's communication had evolved to the point where it was neither warm nor frigid, but they weren't completely well either. Mendeecees had gone back to sleep. He declined, stating that he wasn't interested in repeating something he was still processing in real life, and that, to be honest, he didn't trust the editors to treat it with the care it required. They wanted to have him and Yandi together for a follow-up sit-down, presenting it as a healing moment for the audience. It's one of the few individuals who actually witnessed what was going on was Rosa, who came to see Yandi one afternoon under the pretense of a quick promotional meeting, but stayed long after the cameras had departed. They sat in the kitchen drinking tea while the sun streamed in through the window, and Yandi eventually opened up. He told himself, "I don't think it's permanent," as a reminder that it was merely a passing phase. Yandi didn't ask him to go, but she also didn't ask him to come back. They were both navigating the tension cautiously, not because they were angry, but rather because they were worn out. "I haven't cried since it all happened," Yandi whispered, looking into her cup. "Despite my desire to cry, I am unable to do so. My body seems to be aware. I don't have time to have a breakdown," Rashida remarked. "That's how you know you need one," and nodded. Yandi exhaled a sound that was almost like a giggle and continued, "He's still sleeping below, and you're letting him do it." "I don't want to force closeness that doesn't feel safe right now." Safe, Yang shrugged. Safe emotionally, like knowing he's present. Not just existing in the house with me, but really. With me, I don't feel that way. Her vulnerability was genuine, unforced, and not performative or sympathetic. While some fans had moved on, the internet was still digging. One gossip page posted an old clip of Yandi talking about her wish for more kids from season 8 and mixed it with recent season footage to imply that she might have staged the whole thing. One user wrote, "It's giving storyline prep," while another said, "She's smart." Rashida didn't say anything. She just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You guys are upset because she is a better player than the others," Mimi replied, with a clap. Directly defending Yandi, "You don't know half of what she's carrying. Not everything is for views. Some of it is just life." Yandi did not respond, but she was grateful for the gesture and instead focused on her family. Spending more time with the kids and taking them on short getaways away from cameras and gossip. Eventually, on one of those quiet weekends, she had a sincere conversation with Mendeecees once more. "May I ask you a question?" Yandi said. And he agreed as they watched his daughter sketch on the terrace. He paused for a long moment before responding. "Of course." "When you learned I wasn't pregnant, did you feel let down?" He answered slowly. "I wasn't let down. I was confused, scared, and honestly, I felt like I had let you down. How could it fail me?" He put his hand on hers as he reached across. "And I was drowning in my own fear, even though I know I should have been kinder." Yours was not visible. To me, for a long time, they sat quietly, holding hands and listening to their daughter's crayons. I panicked because I didn't respond in a kind manner. I detest Yandi's eyes welling up. With a more profound release, not with tears, I was at a loss for words. Yandy agreed to participate on the condition that she'll have full creative control over her segment, no manipulation. No out-of-context editing, just her truth. The producers realized they couldn't force a sit-down interview, so they came up with a different plan, a behind-the-scenes mini-documentary on motherhood. The room was filled with scratching paper, and while it wasn't a perfect resolution, it was something. The final cut showed Yandy at home, reading bedtime stories, making dinner, brushing her hair, and speaking softly to the camera. People think, strength looks like yelling, Yandy said, adding, sometimes it's just getting out of bed. Sometimes it involves holding your child when you want to cry, and other times it is knowing when to excuse yourself and say, I need a minute. The fans were moved, and the comments were filled with hearts, flowers, and messages of solidarity. Some of the people who had been critical of her just weeks earlier were suddenly apologizing on social media, admitting that they didn't understand what she was saying. Mendeecees walked upstairs one evening with a blanket in hand after the